Now is the time in our service where we enter into meditation together. So I invite you now to just gently close your eyes and just allow yourself to just breathe. Don't try to force the breath. Just allow it to come, to flow in and out of the body naturally. Rooting to your feet to Mother Earth, allowing your body to just pull in all of her natural healing powers. And now I ask for you to imagine someone in your life. Today is Father's Day, so maybe it's a father, a biological father, anyone that acted as a mentor in your life, someone that brought you love and nourishment. I invite you to visualize this person. What was this person's name? Hold their name in your mind. And now visualize their face. Hold an image of their face in your mind. The kindness held in his or her eyes. Maybe the lines on the face. An image of a loving smile. The feelings or memories of a warm, loving embrace. Words of wisdom that this father figure or mentor taught to you during your time together, or currently teaches you. Maybe you still have them in your life. Now, as you visualize this person or hold their name in your mind, we spoke a little while ago, we sang a little while ago on sending my love. I invite you now to hold this person in your mind and to just send them love, whether they're still on this side or they've made their transition to the other side. Love is a bind that cannot be severed, regardless of geographical location. So I invite you to just hold this person in love and just allow those feelings to flow from you to this person, just surrounding them with the love, the same love that they surrounded you. And as we go into our moment of silence together today, just hold that love, surrounding both of you with that beautiful love as we enter into our time of silence. as you begin to bring your awareness back to this room, I encourage you to take those feelings of love with you. Take them with you as you leave here today and share them with the world. Love is too strong a gift to withhold and to not share. To look into the eyes of another person and to send them pieces of that love. That gift of love that was also shared or has continued to be shared with you from your father figure or your mentor. And let's just take a moment to just allow ourselves to continue to feel this feeling of love for just another moment. And so it is. Namaste. And happy birthday to anyone else who may have their actual birthday today. You could have at least brought cake. That's all I'm going to say. See, Anne had cupcakes brought in for hers, so, just a hint. So, I'm Reverend Evin Wilkins for anybody who is visiting here today or is visiting us with us online. It's good to have you here, so welcome. And I know that this is a day late, but Juneteenth. Wow, it's now an official federal holiday. So, how's that, All right. And I just want to say to our African American congregants that are here with us today or that are online with us today, please know that the Unity of Madison both honors you and sees you and appreciates who you are. So thank you for letting your light to continue to shine brightly. And I'd also like to say Happy Father's Day. It's just a day full of stuff, Happy Father's Day. Now, whether you're a biological father, a father figure, a mentor, regardless of your gender, because we know father figures and mentors can come in all different varieties, Happy Father's Day. Now, we did a very similar quiz on Mother's Day, and I want to present something similar for Father's Day. And I saw Steve's eyes already cut up there, so he probably may know where this is going. But does anybody know, not me, but does anybody know who the other guy on the slide is? All right, so y'all didn't necessarily guess Myrtle, so I'm glad you got Charles. Nancy guessed Myrtle. But it's a younger version or a younger picture of Charles Fillmore, one of our Unity co-founders. And we're so used to seeing pictures of both Charles and Myrtle in their later years, I figured it would be fun to display a younger photo for him today, the same as we did for Myrtle. And, as much as we like to think that this was so, neither he or Myrtle were born, older and wiser. They had to learn the same way that we did. So, but it's perfect to show Mr. Fillmore here today because I wanted to start off talking about him for a minute. We can't talk about Father's Day without talking about the Father of Unity. But if you've been around Unity for a while, you've probably realized now that we don't take the Bible literally. Now, hopefully that's not a shocker to anybody in here today. But in fact, it would be very difficult even if we wanted to take the Bible literally. It's been translated over and over by various people, throughout the centuries. And many of those people, were pretty much like ourselves. They had their own ideas and their own biases and their own ways of interpreting things. But as a result, the scripture that we read that we read today just barely even resembles most of the original scriptures in its original language. most original that they can find anyhow. I don't know if anybody's ever found the most original, but the most original that they can find. But anyhow, to make a long story short, most of the people during the time that these biblical stories and all were taking place, they were told, the things in the Bible were told in the form of parable. They were told in stories and parable. People were required to hear the messages then and just put on their thinking caps and to really listen to the story and to really think about what it meant for them in that moment. The stories were never meant to be taken literally. They were meant to be decided by each individual. So that's what we do here at Unity and other, like congregations today. We interpret them more on a metaphysical level. What are the stories saying to you in any given moment? Now, at first, especially if you're new to metaphysical studies, it can take some time to really feel comfortable with metaphysical interpretations. It can take a little while to really just think, okay, what is this that this is saying to me? But which is why Mr. Fillmore so graciously supplied us with the Metaphysical Dictionary and the Revealing Word. That dictionary is really thick. I think there's one down in the lending library if you ever want to see it. Well, we've got this guy to thank for that. But those books are there to assist you as you read through the Bible, especially if you feel stuck in a certain passage in the Bible or a certain verse. One of those, the Revealing Word and the Metaphysical Dictionary, can really be helpful. But of course, Mr. Fillmore provides us with a metaphysical interpretation of the word Father, because this word is mentioned so many times in the Bible, as you can imagine. Now, he usually provides us more than one definition of various words, depending on their usage in the Bible. And of course, the word Father was no different. But today I wanted to take this specific definition from the Metaphysical Dictionary. Mr. Fillmore said, to define Father, he said, there is a relationship with God into which we can enter where, and he uses the word he, but we'll say it, where it seems closer than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. When we enter into this relationship, we become acutely aware of God as a living presence, and we are lifted up by its love. In this consciousness, we were able to say as Jesus did, Father. Now, I know this description of God, it kind of feels a little like Charles Fillmore might be describing an external being, doesn't it? It kind of has a little bit of that flavor to it. But I don't really think that's what he had in mind when he created this definition. I think he was likely just using the terminology and the language of his time. So I want to take this description of God and I want to turn it inward. When we move into this relationship with God that's not there, but that's here. That's here inside of each and everybody that's in this room and viewing us online. I want to encourage us to become more acutely aware of it as a living presence that is already within us, that lifts us up by the love, lifts our conscience up by the love of that presence that resides there. This is what we can refer to as Father. So let's discuss how we can grow closer to God in here and how this can result in our consciousness being lifted up by the love that resides within here. Now whenever I get ready to write one of these talks for Sunday, I start perusing my book collection. And I hate to admit it, but it's probably bigger than the collection we got down there. Mindy and I really need to go through our books, but we have a hard time with it, But I start perusing that collection for a book, and one specific one stood out to me since it's Father's Day. It's called King, Warrior, Magician, and Lover, Rediscovering the Archetypes of the Mature Masculine, and it's by authors Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's a really good book. But I found something that stood out in that book when I was looking through it. It's a section on what the authors labeled the know-it-all trickster. I've never pretended to know it all. I don't know about y'all, but anyway. But it talks about the immature masculine in states where it causes would-be men to manifest inappropriate infantilism in their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Now keep in mind that all of us here, whether we identify as male, female, or non-binary, we all contain masculine energy, just like we all contain feminine energy. Like Josie was saying earlier, it's all about the balance, a part of the yin and yang. So although this book is probably really initially written for those who identify as men, it can really apply to all of us, no matter what our gender. But what really stuck out to me with this know-it-all trickster is this. The immature masculinity plays tricks of a more or less serious nature in one's own life and on others. And the authors go on to say, he is expert at creating appearances and then selling us on those appearances. He seduces people into believing him, and then he pulls the rug out from under them. He gets us to believe him, to trust him, and then betrays us and laughs at our misery. He leads us to a paradise in the jungle, only to serve us a feast of cyanide. He is always looking for a sucker. He is a practical joker, adept at making fools of us. He is a manipulator. And finally, he's always got his hand up in class, not because he wants to participate in the discussion, but because he wants his classmates to understand that he is more intelligent than they are. So I want to ask, does any of this sound at all familiar? I'm not pointing fingers or anything like that, but there's a few things, I'm going to explain, there's a few things that we might be dealing with here. Negative thought patterns, monkey mind, the ego. Now does it sound a little bit more familiar? Probably more, but we talk about these specific things off and on here at Unity, and we do it more than just here, and likely in other spiritual teachings as well. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter which of those it is, because when we think about these things, when we believe this trickster, we are weakening our consciousness to the God where? Within. Now, most of us go through these times in our lives where we have doubt, don't we? Is there anybody in this room that has never experienced doubt? Or online. We can't see your hands online, but we trust you to be honest. But in fact, not most, but all of us. We all go through these times in our lives where we experience doubt, don't we? You know, doubt that maybe we're capable of accomplishing something or even of being worthy. Sometimes we all have those doubts. You know, thinking that maybe we aren't strong enough to make it through another day or even another moment. But see, that's what the trickster wants you to believe. But so often, belief is everything, right? Whether it's true or not, belief becomes everything. Because belief can shape the way we see things, the way we see ourselves, the way we see our environment, the way we see others. Belief shapes everything. Again, weakening our consciousness. Not severing it, because that can never happen. But even the weakening of it can sometimes make it feel that way, can't it? You sometimes hear people ask, where is God in all of this? And that might be asked from people who sometimes have a more traditional view of God, but you may even sometimes feel this way yourself, whether you believe that God's in here or out there. Sometimes we all still have that thought. And you might be asking yourself right now, well, this trickster doesn't sound like a character I want to keep around. How do I get rid of it? Completely getting rid of it is not the goal here. Sometimes it can even help keep us in check just a little bit, We sometimes do a lot of talk around the ego, don't we? We've mentioned that. So I've heard that mentioned so many times over the years I've been in Unity to talk about the ego. And when people hear the ego mentioned, I've heard people basically kind of say, bad ego, go away. I want you away. But of course, the ego is just the ego. The ego isn't good and the ego isn't bad. It just is. It's how we handle the ego that is most important. And it's the same with the trickster. It's how we handle it that is the most important. Because the trickster is always going to be there. It's a part of us. It's a part of you, and like most things, it's got its place. It can help keep us humble when we need to be, but we just need to prevent it from growing too large and too wild. We need to keep it just in check a little bit. But think about it for a moment. Did anybody ever tell you to eat your spinach or some other vegetable when you were a kid? I think we all heard that. I remember watching the Popeye cartoons, where he'd open the can of spinach and eat the spinach to grow big and strong. But people would tell us that, eat your spinach, eat your vegetables to grow big and strong, to develop good bones or whatever it is. But the trickster is much the same. It grows and it thrives when it's fed. Each time you feel envy, the trickster grows a little bit. Each time you experience feelings of unworthiness about yourself, the trickster grows a little bit more. Each time we choose to take part in gossip, the trickster grows. Each time you look in the mirror and you think a less than pleasant thought about yourself, the trickster grows. When we don't feel special, it grows. Does anybody start to notice a little bit of a pattern there? Are you starting to notice what feeds it the most? It's that internal dialogue that feeds it the most. It's allowing those conversations in our head to take place. Not all conversations, of course, but those that begin to question our worth. Those thoughts that tell you when you see the neighbors pull a new car into the driveway. Look what they've got. What did they do to deserve that? My car's a few years old. I'm the one that deserved the new car. We're even judging our worth on those things that don't even really ultimately matter in the end. This is a really drastic example, but there was a story in the news several years ago. It was about a girl. It might have even happened in Texas. I'm not sure. And I think the girl was in high school, but she was trying out for cheerleader. And her mother became fully involved, and she somehow tied her own self-worth to her daughter's accomplishment as to whether or not she made cheerleader. But she felt that there was one special girl who was likely going to be the first choice, the preferred choice over her daughter. Therefore, it began to threaten her daughter's spot on the team. So the mother decides to actually hire a hitman to take out the mother of the other girl, thinking that the other girl would be too distraught to carry on and go ahead and try out for cheerleader. Now, thankfully, all of this came out prior to anything happening, and that was an extreme example, but that's an extreme example of the trickster getting way out of control. But that's also the example of one of those things that really doesn't matter in the end. And we can help keep the trickster, our own trickster, in check with our awareness, right? Because when we're aware of things, that's when we can start getting a handle on it. An awareness that the trickster is there, knowing that it's there. And we do that by paying attention to our thoughts. And we know when our thoughts kind of start to run amok. We know that. We don't even have to question it. Maybe we start to feel a little agitated. A little bit of anger. That maybe even our thoughts are starting to get the best of us. We're thinking things that aren't true, making up things that may happen even when they haven't happened yet. And you'll know it. You won't even have to ask whether or not the trickster's starting to come up here. You won't even have to ask because you're going to feel out of alignment. And each one of us, that feels differently probably than each one of us. But you know by now when you're starting to feel out of alignment. And these are the moments where we, again, practice that pause we talked about from our book study, where we just pause for just a moment. We step back for a second. And we choose maybe to just sit down and breathe for a few moments. Just sit down and breathe. And just know that you're okay right now in this moment. To enter into some prayer or some meditation. To call a friend. To just step outside into nature and get some fresh air. Anything to reel us back into the present moment. And to remember that those things are nothing but an illusion because they aren't true. And we'll believe them to be less true as we strengthen our consciousness and our connection to God in here. So that connection, that will be what takes us back to the definition that Charles Fillmore gave us for the word Father. There is a relationship with God into which we can enter where it seems closer than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. When we enter into this relationship, we become acutely aware of God as a living presence, and we are lifted up by its love. In this consciousness, we were able to say as Jesus did, Father. So happy Father's Day to all, and namaste. And I am now going to invite up our infamous board president, Steve Roberts, to give a board report.